Okay, guys, so you should have just done the email pre-test and you should have emailed me when you were done with that. And now you're going to need this one. Email is not a text message notes, and you're going to need the note guide. But before we get going on the actual notes, I want to show you something. When you open this up, it's going to open up in a Google Doc, but the first thing you'll see is that you have this Venn diagram. Well, if you just click on it, you can't exactly type into it. So what you do have to do is it's super easy. You just double click on one of the circles. It pulls up a shape, and then you can type right into it. Okay, once you type, you click Save and Close, and it would pop up here. So that's the first thing I want to show you, but now you do need this pulled up to follow along with me with your note guide. Okay, so you should have that note guide pulled up, and I said this earlier, but email is such a push this year for you all to use when talking with us, especially if we are doing everything online at some point. You all need to know how to send a proper email to your teachers, and how there are nice ways to ask about certain things that you might want or need from your teachers or anyone in general. And so we're going to talk about the different parts of an email, and how to really construct a professional, appropriate email. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is email versus a text message. Okay, so some of you all, from personal experience, I know, like to send an email, but it sounds like you're texting me. And that's just really not how an email is supposed to work. So if you look here, you'll see that in the middle, both are forms of written communication, right? So either way, I'm writing something to someone to tell them something. However, if you look at the email side, you're going to see that it's more formal. It's supposed to be more professional sounding than what you would send in a text message. It's going to have a letter format, and I'll show you what that means later. It just means kind of like paragraphs. It has a certain structure that it's supposed to follow, whereas a text message, there's not really structure there. It's just however you want to convey the message. So when you're looking at an email, you've clicked compose, you're starting a new one. The very first line you're going to see is to. Okay, and so to is really simple. This is where you are making it known who you're trying to send the email to. So it says you're going to send to the person that the email directly affects. And this is where you'll write out their email. So the example is you're going to email me because you're thanking me for being a great teacher. So in the to field, you would type my email. So to is who is it going to? All right, right underneath the to, you're going to see this thing that I'll call it CC. But that's what it also looks like on the email. It'll say to, and then right underneath it says CC. And what CC stands for is carbon copy. And what happens is that sends an email to another recipient. Okay, so but that it also gives a notification that they got an email, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you want that specific person to respond. So the example being that, so you're writing an email to me to thank me for being a great teacher, but you might CC Mr. Norman to let him know that you think that I'm great. So it's not necessarily saying, Mr. Norman, I need you to reply. It's saying, I want you to see that I'm sending this email. That's what CC means. And the person that you're sending it actually to, so remember you're sending it to me, I can see who you've CC'd. So I know that you've sent it to Mr. Norman. So right underneath CC is BCC. Okay, and what that is, it's a blind carbon copy. So right before, right, we talked about carbon copy is you're sending it to someone that you want to see it, but they don't have to respond necessarily. Well, this is the same concept, except the person that you're sending it to can't see who you've carbon copied on. Okay, so before I saw that Mr. Norman was on there, but now you're going to send it to your mom because you want her to read it, but I won't know that you've sent it to her. So on my side of the email, I'll see that you've sent it to me, you've CC'd Mr. Norman, and that's all that I'll see. I won't see that you have added your mom as someone who's also getting this email. And so Again, this does not mean that you need your mom to respond to the email. It's just you showing her that you want her to read it. But this requires confidentiality because you're going to have to keep it from me that you sent it to your mom. And right underneath BCC, you will see subject. And so subject is, what is this email about? Okay. And so in our case, you're writing a thank you email. So a simple subject would be thank you. It doesn't have to be long. A lot of you all will actually write the whole email in the subject line. And that's wrong. The subject is just a snippet of what you want the email to be about. Okay, so thank you is the subject for an email thanking your teacher. Has something simple. If you're wanting to ask someone to go pick up something from the grocery store, you could say grocery list. Whatever. The subject needs to be direct and clear cut and to the point. So that's everything at the beginning. To CC, BCC, subject. Now you're in the box that actually is where you're going to write the email. Okay, and so you're going to start with what's called a salutation. And this is kind of like when we go back to saying that an email is kind of letter format, that's what we're doing here. So a salutation is, hello, dear Miss Brumley, good afternoon. Okay, so it's a good practice to use the person you're sending to's name with your greeting. So, hello, Miss Brumley, good afternoon, Miss Brumley. For formal situations, write the recipient's title and last name. Formal would be if you're making a request to Mr. Norman, you would say, good afternoon, Mr. Norman. If you're emailing your best friend about something that you saw, you can say, hello, Bob, whatever it is. You don't have to be necessarily as formal. It depends on who you're actually sending it to. Also want to make sure that you use their proper title and spelling. And you need to research to make sure that you've got the right title and that it's spelled correctly, okay? And so proper title, again, meaning like Mrs. Brumley. So you wouldn't put MISS, you would put MRS Brumley. Now, good practice would be that if you don't know if someone is married or not, you just put MS. Okay, so that is also something to think about. Another thing would be if you're a professor, if you're emailing your professor at Western and you don't know if they're a doctor or professor, it's just good practice to just say, hello, Professor Brumley, right? Don't say, hello, Dr. Brumley or hello, Miss Brumley. You would want to be a little bit more formal and try to put their title in there with you. All right, and then you're going to have block paragraph format, and what that means is you're going to write what you need to say, press enter, and then you have spaces between your paragraphs. And so you're going to want to use standard English. You want to make sure that you're grammatically and mechanically correct. Really try not to use emojis, especially if you're sending it to someone important. Now, if I'm sending an email to Miss Lee down the hall, who's my really good friend, I might throw in a smiley face depending on what the content of the message is. But 9 times out of 10, you'll want to try to be as professional as possible. So that means no emojis, no smiley faces, no abbreviated words, slang, anything like that. And avoid overusing exclamation points. So you need to, when you're writing an email, think about how that person would read it. If it has an exclamation point, I might think that you're raising your voice or that you're yelling. And too many exclamation points can honestly change the whole tone of an email without you even knowing that it has. Okay, and then you have a closing. So I've said, Dear Miss Brumley, I've done the letter format to say everything I needed to say, and now I'm closing it out. And so a closing is going to be sincerely, respectfully, best, whatever. So follow your closing with a comma. So best, comma, and you would leave it at that until we get to this next part, which is the sign off. Okay, and so you're going to write your first and last name to sign off, and if you have a title, you'd want to put it underneath it. So the example being that I just wrote sincerely, comma, Sarah Smith, Vice President. And just a few other things to consider when writing an email is beware reply all. So if you're in an email chain, and someone sent an email to you and 10 other people, but you only need to respond to one person, if you click reply all 10 people that got the email originally are going to see your response. So you need to make sure that you're only sending it to the person that you want to send it to. Now, if you think that everyone in the email needs to hear what you have to say, well, then that's different, okay? Always proofread before you send. You want to double check for grammar. You want to double check that you haven't said something you didn't mean to say or whatever. So proofread. You have the option to save to drafts if you get interrupted. So if I'm in the middle of writing an email and something happens, I can save it as a draft, and then that way I can come back to it later. And on second or third exchanges, you might not have to include a salutation or a closing. So if I'm responding back and forth for 4 or 5 emails, I might eventually stop saying dear so-and-so and sincerely, because they know that it's me. We've been having a conversation. So that's a little bit about email. Make sure that you fill out your note guide. And then we are going to submit it to Google Classroom so that I can give you credit for doing it with me.